right, so tonight we are talking about what is known as constant rate of change. To start with, we have to know what that means. And so let's write this definition down. And it says, a rate of change is a rate that describes how one quantity changes in relation to another. Oops, and let's fix that spelling there. Oops, shouldn't be capital. When a rate that describes how one quantity changes in relation to another. In a constant rate of change, the rate of change is always the same. So let me tell you what I mean by that. If I told you that I was a computer programmer and I was writing lines of code. So I have line of code. And because I'm really good at it, I can charge for how much I want to for every line of code. So for example, if I have 50 lines of code, it's going to cost you $1,000. 100 lines of code will cost you $2,000. 150 lines of code will cost you $3,000, and 200 lines of code will cost you $4,000. Now, if we look at how these change, how does cost change? Well, the cost goes up $1,000 every time I go up in the chart. So notice that every time I'm doing this, I'm going up by 1,000. It's 1,000 for every what? $1,000 more for every 50 lines of code. It's $1,000 more for every 50 lines of code. So my constant rate of change works out to be $1,000 for every 50 lines of code. Well, that reduces down to 20, so it's $20 per line of code. And that is my constant rate of change. So for every line of code, it's $20. Let's take another example here. Let's say, for example, that I look at the number of cars that I'm going to wash. Cars washed. So I want the number of cars versus the cost. So if I do 5 cars, it'll cost me $40. Oops, take that back, change that. 10 cars will cost me $80. 15 cars will cost $120. And 20 cars will cost $160. So I want to know what is the constant rate of change. So let's look at how things change. How does the number of cars washed change? Well, from 5 to 10, it's a 5 change. From 10 to 15 is a 5 change. And from 15 to 20 is a 5 change. In the money, from 40 to 80 is a $40 change. From 80 to 120 is a $40 change. And from 120 to 160 is a $40 change. So I want to know what is the constant rate of change. So I always look at my Y value first, so that's the cost, and my X value, which is per car. So when I do that, I notice that it's constantly 40 over 5, or I can say $8 per car. So my constant rate of change is $8 per car. You try this one for me. I have the number of buses to the number of students. 2 buses will hold 144 students. 3 buses will hold 216 students. 4 buses will hold 288 students. And 5 buses will hold 360 students. Will you tell me what is the constant rate of change? So pause the recording and see if you could find the constant rate of change. Okay, if you did it correctly, you notice that this went up by 1, this went up by 1, and this went up by 1. The number of students would always go up by 72. So then my constant rate of change is 72 over 1, or 72 students per bus. So my constant rate of change is always going to be 72 students per bus. Now occasionally, I could give it to you in terms of a graph. So I might do this. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 200, 400, 600, 800, 1,000. And this is going to be the time in hours and my distance in miles. 1 hour will be 300 miles. 2 hours will be 600 miles. And 3 hours will be 900. So this was, again, 1, 300, 2, 600, and 3, 900. And by the way, this does do a straight line going through the origin. Okay, so the line, got distracted there. So the line goes through the origin, so it is proportional, which is nice, but I want to know what is the constant rate of change. So if I was going to look at the graph, what I might do is make a table out of it and make a table of hours and miles and write down my ordered pairs. 1 hour is 300 miles, 2 hours, 600 miles, 3 hours, 900 miles. So then I can look at my change, which is 1 and 1, 300, 300. So my constant rate of change would be 300 over 1, which is 300 miles per hour. and there's my constant rate of change. So here's what I would like for you to go in your textbooks, look at page 68, and I would like you to try numbers 1 and 2. I would like you to look at numbers 1 and 2, and then we will talk about those tomorrow in class.